Okay, so now we get to our second reading for the 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time, our final video for this week. Here we go. We're getting right back into Romans chapter 8, verses 28 to 30, which comes right on the heels, again, of last week's second reading, which was verses 26 to 28. So, or excuse me, 26 to 27. So we're on 28 to 30. Really simple, shorter reading with some really good stuff in it. So here we go. St. Paul says, "Brothers and sisters, we know that all things work for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those he destined, he also called. And those he called, he also justified. And those he justified, he also glorified." Okay, that's it. That's it. Now so verse 28, of course, is great. All things work for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. So who is it that he's called? Well, we know that Scripture says elsewhere that God desires all people to be saved. So who are called? We could say, in some ways, all people. We know not all people respond. We know this. This is just a fact of life that although many people have heard the gospel, not all respond to it. And among those who hear the gospel, we hear within the gospel this call to, of course, follow Jesus, but then to spread the gospel. The reason I hesitate is that we have to say many have heard the gospel, because not all have heard the gospel. And why have not all heard the gospel? Because not all who have heard have responded. If all who have heard would respond and truly take it to their hearts, then all would hear the gospel. But as it is, not all respond who have heard. It's a little bit of a tricky deal, but this is a reality that if more people truly heard the gospel and let themselves be changed by it in faith, then a big part of that would be going out and telling people about it, and not just telling people, but actively looking for places, for people where the gospel has not been proclaimed, who have not heard the gospel, so that they could hear it. But nonetheless, okay, so all who are called, so that's all of us. We know that all things work for good for those who love God. For those who love God, it's a big mystery, this reality of divine providence. This where we believe that God is always at work behind the scenes, even though it doesn't always seem like it. Sometimes, in fact, it seems like he's not there at all. And other times, maybe it seems like, gosh, it's tough to say. We believe that behind the scenes, God is always at work. He's never out of control of a situation. He may know that you and I or others are going to choose to rebel against him, that we are going to choose to turn away from him because of sin and choose sin instead. But for those who love God, that is, those who choose him above all things work for good. Even suffering, even pain, even betrayal and rejection, abandonment, whatever it is, for those who love God, we believe that all things work for good by the power of God. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. Okay, now this is a little bit of a tricky deal, because we're talking about predestination, and there's a big divide among some Christians when we're talking about predestination, and some people want to believe in double predestination. So what's going on here? I'm not an expert in this by any means, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So what does it say? He foreknew. For those he foreknew, he also predestined. So foreknowledge. What is foreknowledge? Foreknowledge is to know in advance. Think of Psalm 139, where the author says, "Even before a word is on my tongue, you, O Lord, know it." And the Lord says, I think to Jeremiah, he says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." This reality that God, he foreknows everything. He has foreknowledge. He knows everything in advance. So he gives us free will, and this is part of a mystery here. He gives us free will, and yet at the same time, he knows what we'll choose. Sometimes, I think sometimes maybe we can get a glimpse of this when we have like a really good friend or parents watching their children or spouses or whatever it is. Like, you get to know that person so well that you know they have freedom to choose. You still know what they're going to choose. You know, like how many times, if you have a really close friend, or again, like a child or something, it's just like, yeah, I knew you would choose that. If you had the choice, I knew that you would choose it. And it's like, yeah, but I still had freedom. Yes, you did. but I knew you would choose it. This is God. He has foreknowledge. And he's omniscient, right? We believe this. He's all-knowing. Okay, now what's going on? Okay, so for those who he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. There's something here about the Lord's knowledge, even before we come into existence, his knowledge of us, that he also, I don't know, he predestines us. He sets us on the path toward heaven. For those that he knew, he would predestine them to be conformed to the image. Again, there's freedom involved. There has to be freedom because God gave us free will. But at the same time, there's some kind of a mystery at play here where he has also predestined us to heaven, those who love God, so that he, that is Jesus, might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. That Jesus, he's the firstborn, and we, when we are baptized, we are adopted into God's family so that we become the brothers and sisters of Christ. Which, like, we become those, and we also attach ourselves to him. We become sons in the Son. This is it. Okay, and those he predestined, he also called, and those he called, he also justified. To justify is to make that person righteous before him. He justified them. And those he justified, he also glorified. Okay, so this is amazing, somehow, and mysterious at the same time, and maybe a little bit frustrating because it's hard to wrap our minds around this. And this is something that as you can tell, I'm trying to explain it, and myself, I'm having a difficult time because maybe I don't even fully understand it. I don't know. But the Lord knows all things in advance because he has foreknowledge, because he knows in advance. Okay, he predestines as well. Predestination is to decide in advance. So he sees the choices, because he has foreknowledge, he sees the choices that we're making. And those who he knows will choose to love his Son, he predestines them to heaven. He desires all people to choose. And this is the thing, is that even though he knows, and even though he has already decided, he still gives us freedom. So there's actually, again, if you think of like the parable of the weeds and the wheat last week, or you could even say like the net here with the fish. There's some mystery at play that we could at one point seem like we are weeds, or we could at one point seem like we are undesirable fish that will just be thrown away. When the reality is that God actually sees that at this point in our lives, this is how we're going to be, but down the road, we will come to a place of faith where we will choose him. And that his decision on us doesn't change because, again, he knows all things in advance. His decision doesn't change for us. But he allows us to go through periods maybe of a lack of faith. He allows us to go through periods of doubt. He allows us to go through periods of sin, whatever it is, because he knows that it's going to lead somehow, it's going to lead to our conversion. Again, it's a great mystery, and we have freedom within all of it, but nonetheless, he sees it all. He has seen it all for ages and ages before this. So anyway, that's it. Okay, and ultimately, those who are predestined are called. Those who are called are justified. Those who are justified are glorified with him to reign in heaven, in the kingdom. Those who love God. I think this is the key for those who love God. What about those who don't love God? Well, in some ways, there's a reality that we have a part to play in that, and in trying to help them come to a place of faith. In other ways, we can surrender those people to the Lord. As we play our part, yes, we can also surrender those people to the Lord, just trusting that maybe somehow he's calling to them, maybe somehow he's waiting for their conversion, and he knows that it will come. Who knows? It also is part of his judgment, though, that some people are thrown out, right? Some people are the undesirable fish. Some people are the weeds, and that's by their choice, which gets back to the first part. If people haven't heard the gospel, then it's tough for them to choose. And so for you and I, we have a responsibility, actually, as faithful disciples of Jesus, as brothers and sisters of the firstborn, we have a responsibility to share that gospel so that others maybe can choose to love God above all things, and therefore they can actually recognize that there's been a call on their life from the beginning. What a gift. Okay, God bless you. I hope this was more helpful than confusing, this last reading, and I hope you have a great Sunday and a great Lord's Day, that you have a deep encounter with the Lord in his word through continual meditation, through the proclamation, maybe through the homily, and I hope that leads to a deeper encounter with Jesus in the Holy Eucharist. Okay, God bless you. Peace.